Hello everyone, I am Sashikala. Now in this lecture, I will deal with the fourth poem in Unit 1, the poem written by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Now to tell you details about Robert Frost, he was a celebrated American poet as well as a playwright. Now he is a man who is said to be of the Romantic tradition. In the previous two poems we saw what Romantic poetry is, where nature was used as a medium by the poets to express their thoughts. Now Robert Frost is not actually a Romantic poet. He did use nature, so he is said to be a man who is in the Romantic tradition alone. Now his poems were so famous that he won actually 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry and also was nominated for the Nobel Prize for Literature nearly 31 times. He has written hundreds of poems and all these poems have been published in many collections of poetry. Now to tell the theme of his poetry, most of these poems are called to be dark meditations on universal themes. His poems on the surface are very simple, but the underlying meaning of every poem reveals some universal truth. His poems are very ambiguous, as we say. The apparent meaning on the surface of the poem can never be understood if we need not go into the depth of the poem. So his poems are ambiguous and they are often infused with layers of irony. He is also called as a nature poet. I did say that he used nature as a medium of his language, and he is well known for his depictions of rural life and landscape of New England. Through such a rural setting, he examined complex social as well as philosophical themes. So his poems are infused with ideas which are reflected in the society. He has also explored much the fundamental questions of human existence. Now Frost is seen through his poems to be very interested in showing the human reaction to nature's processes. So his poems show how man reacts to nature in his poems. Now he has defined poetry as a reproduction of the tones of actual speech. Now what do I mean by that? If you remember, I told William Wordsworth was very specific in using the language used commonly by people in their everyday life. Similarly, Frost also believed that colloquial language is the one which would help people to enjoy and understand poetry. So he used the colloquial language of America, and that's why I said it is a reproduction of the tones of actual speech. He also felt that the complete poem is one where an emotion has found its thought and the thought has found the words. So the first, a poet has a thought, he feels an emotion which he frames as a thought in his mind, then he tries to choose the right words to express his thoughts. Now I have to tell you the context of this poem, otherwise the meaning of the poem would not be entirely understood. Now this poem, as you see, the title in itself is very significant. The road not taken, he says. Usually people will tell what path they have chosen, but the title of the poem itself tells you that he is not talking of the regular path we are choosing, but of the paths which we have not chosen. Now this poem was written when he was casually sitting on a couch in his New England home. He remembered one of his friends who had gone away to war and had regretted making that choice in life. So in this poem he wanted to convince people who often regret for having made a different choice by showing them that one choice is not much different from the other. So the context here is where he wanted to convince his friend who regretted going to war that the option he had chosen was not wrong. Now to tell you about this poem, as I said, on the surface it's very simple, but beneath it we find it to be a very thoughtful, meditative as well as a reflective poem. The main theme of the poem is that human beings are confronted with dilemmas when they have choices before them, how their choice is defined by their thoughts and how their choices define their future. So here we find him narrating a simple incident of a man walking in a woods, as he calls it, where he makes a fork in the road. Now woods is where you have a thick undergrowth of trees. It's not as extensive as a forest, but it still has trees growing very closely together. So this man who is walking in the woods, he sees a divergence where two roads separate and go. He does not know which road to choose and stands there and meditates. Now this poem can be actually equated with life, where we have choices before us and we also have to take time to think which choice to choose. This poem also is ambiguous as it questions free will versus determinism. I can make my own choice, but I have to be determined that the choice I make is the one which will destine my future. So here through this poem he prompts not just his friend to whom he has written it, but also the other people to ponder on life's choices. This poem is also a very beautiful metaphor for life. So here he shows life as a path which leads us to a destination that is our future. Now the fork in the path is life altering decisions we take. So the roads here are the choices in life which impacts our future. Now through this poem also he tries to convey that choices have to be made by individuals. People will not always have the help of others to help them make a choice. It's only at the discretion of people that wise choices can be made. Now this poem consists 4 stanzas of 5 lines each. The rhyme scheme of the poem is AB, AAB. We will now see a detailed explanation of the poem. Now shall we move to the poem? Now the first stanza is where the lines are, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Now here he is talking of 2 roads diverging in a yellow wood. What does that yellow mean? Already we have been seeing in romantic poems how these words are familiar. Yellow here of course denotes to the autumn season, where all the leaves have turned old and yellow. Now here he is walking apparently in a woods. What is a woods? I can call the woods to be a forest or a thick undergrowth where trees are growing by closely. So here he is saying 2 roads are diverging before me in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. Naturally any person cannot walk on 2 roads. So here he is saying, and be one lone traveller I stood. So now here he has 2 pathways, he is unsure which to choose, but we also find that he is a solitary traveller. So he has no one here to ask advice or suggestion from, so he has to make his own decision. I looked down one as far as I could. As long as his eye could see, he is looking down one road to where it bent in the undergrowth. But can he see the end of that road? He is unable to see the end of the road because the road is bent, it is curving into the undergrowth, that is the trees are hiding the end of the road. Now these 4 lines just tell of a man walking in a woods. He is seeing 2 roads there, he is looking down one road, but he is unable to see the end of the road. But what is this actually implying? I told you this poem is a reflection on life. So here the metaphor is where 2 roads in life shows the 2 choices man has. So we are always sometimes left alone, we cannot have people to get advice from. So being a solitary traveller, he says, likewise in our life most of the choices have to be taken by us. But these choices, as we know, have great impact on our life. So this man is standing and looking at that road, but the end is not clear to him, it is obscured. Likewise in life, no one can predict how our choice will turn. So we cannot know the end result of our choice, it is hidden from our eyes. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. Now we saw him in the previous stanza saying that he looked at one road where it was bent. But what did he do now? He is saying, I took the other as just as fair and having perhaps the better claim. Now when we have two choices, how do we choose one? We think of the pros and cons, as we say. We find out what would be better and how to choose it. Likewise, this man is trying to decide which path is good. He is looking at one and then he is deciding the other, because he sees it is as fair and has a better claim, because he feels the second choice or the second road to be better. It has more advantages. Because, and then in the next few lines we find him giving certain reasons for him making a choice of the second road. Because it was grassy and wanted way, though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. Now he is looking at both the paths and deciding how to choose them. Now naturally, how would any person on the road choose a path which is clean or cleared without any hurdles? So here he is looking for a path which is oft walked by people. So what is he meaning here? He is looking for the path which is more grassy. So that shows that people have not walked much on that path, and as for that passing there had warned them really about the same. But after walking in that path, he finds that this road too had been walked much by other people. So it is not as grassy as it first looked to him. Now what does that signify about life? We start on walking on one path, we feel that this path will be better than the other, but we find that this path is also the same as the other. That is why we should understand that every path in life has the same benefits, disadvantages. Also it is filled with problems and challenges. So we cannot say that one choice or option is better than the other. Now the next stanza is, and both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Now here the time of the day is also specified for us. It is morning. So he has chosen one path of the two roads. Now as he walks on the road, he finds that this road too had been walked much by other people. And he says that the leaves had not been trodden much. Maybe not many people had walked this path. In leaves, no step had trodden black. We know that when leaves are continuously crushed, they become black. But here he shows that this path had not been walked much, but it was not also left undisturbed. Some people had walked in that road too. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Now what is he thinking as he is taking one path? He is saying, let me take the other path another day. But in the next line itself he says, this is improbable. He cannot of course come back the same road and take the other path he had left. Yet knowing how way leads on to way. What does this line signify? We know that we take one choice, we feel that okay, let me take the other option later. But we know that life continues. One day leads into another, and we cannot have an opportunity of going back to the previous day and taking the other option we had left. That is, in life we always have to keep on moving ahead. So he says, I doubted if I should ever come back. He knows for certain while he is walking that though he has an intention of going back and going the other road, he knows that he can never change things, he can never go back in life. Now this is the last stanza of the poem. In this stanza he says, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Now here we find a shift in time. Till now he had been using in the present tense what he had been doing there in the forest, but suddenly we have a movement towards the future. He says in ages and ages hence, that is in future, suddenly he might think of this day when he had made one choice over the other. And this is something which everyone in our life faces. At some future time we might think of the other choice which we had left. We might even regret that we had not chosen the other choice. And what does he say here? I shall be telling this with a sigh. Maybe something might have happened to him on the way. He might have found some hurdles and disturbances, and he might have thought there were two roads. I did not take the other road but this road. And what is the criteria he fixed for walking in that road? The one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Now, we also have to understand here that he is not insisting that everyone should take a different decision. That is a difficult decision. Here he says one less travelled by. Of course, he saw a path and decided, okay, this is less travelled by. But again in life we should not be different and unique and choosing difficult path. That is not the meaning the poet wants to convey. So here he is giving a strong message, especially to students. You should be wise and careful in making your choices. Realize that the choices you make now are what the whole future depends on. So make a choice that will make a difference in your life. Let that choice be a wise choice so that you pass on in life and never look back with a sigh and regret the decision you have. So quickly see an overall summary of the poem here. The first stanza, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. This is a very popular poem of Frost. Now here he is saying how he had to choose in the folk in a road in a yellow wood. He walks down one road because he is a lonely traveller with no advice from others, and he chose the other road because the other road was covered in undergrowth. Now the second stanza reads as, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there. So in this stanza we see that he is telling the reasons why he chose the second path. It is grassy, it did not seem as though many people had walked on it, and it was fair, it was fairly good for him to choose. So the metaphorical meaning in this poem, in this stanza, is that the choice we have in life and the unpredictable future, but we have to choose a right way and proceed in life. The next stanza, and both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. So here we find that it has a metaphorical meaning with life too. We take a path and then we decide to go to the other choice later on, but naturally life is a continuous process. No one can halt and go back to the previous choice they had left. Here he says, I knew that way leads on to another way, but still I thought that maybe I could try the other option I have left. Now again here the morning, though it signifies in the poem the time of the day, this could signify many things in life. What could morning be? I could assume it to be youth in a human life. So you are very young then. When you are young, you will have difficulty in making choices, especially without others' help. Realize that life's journey is continuous. So choose one path after thinking well. Whether it is right or wrong, don't regret it later. And then the last stanza is, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. So here he also tells us how in future we should not regret the choice we have made. We have to realize that the choice we have made has made all the difference in our life. Again, as we say a proverb, the other side of the bank always looks greener, but only when you go to the other side you will find that it is not as green as you expected it to be. Likewise in life, the choice you have made is good. After careful thinking, if you make a choice, that choice will bring in all the benefits you require. So don't regret and think that the other choice might have been better than the one you had chosen. And again, as I said, he does not insist that we have to choose the path which has not been chosen by others. It is where he just says, take a decision, do not in future regret what choice you have made. Okay. Now, after seeing stanza by stanza explanation of the poem, we will begin the analysis of the poem here. Now, I will first discuss the poetic devices in the poem. Now, the metaphor. The metaphor is of course where comparison is made between two things without differentiating them. Now, what is the metaphor here he is using? The roads, the two roads he talks of in the poem is actually the choices in life. And take the significance of the title, the road not taken. Is it not rather different? We might be talking of the road we have taken, but what is he talking of here? He is talking of the road not taken. So, this is a metaphor for life where the options we have not taken, we always put our mind on it and we contemplate. So, here he is saying the road is a metaphor for life, choose the right path when there is a divergence. And yellow woods, as we saw, it is the season of autumn. So, the metaphor here is for the autumn season, and then also the roads is a symbol of life, and also the dilemma, why should there be a fork? It denotes the dilemma where we have to contemplate deeply and decide it for the better or the worse. Okay, let us see the symbolism of this poem. The whole poem is a symbol. What is it symbol for? It is a symbol for life. Now, the roads, I will take the individual words and tell you the symbolism. The two roads represent the choices we have in life. Next, the yellow wood is also a symbol where the yellow color might predict the distant future. Future where it is not known to us, but it also represents hope that what we do now will have a better result in the future. Now, woods is again a symbol for a place, that is a life where humans cannot know what lies ahead of them. Like in a forest which is filled with trees, we cannot know what is happening. Now, there are no signs in a forest, in a woods, to take the right direction. Similarly, in life also, we cannot expect there to be signboards for us to see and choose the options. Now, let me take the first poetic device, assonance. What is assonance? It is a repetition of a vowel sound in subsequent words or in a sentence. So, here the first line itself has an assonance. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Now, in the line you see here, the sound O is repeated. Two roads, yellow wood. So, in all these words, I have the vowel O being repeated, which gives me an assonance. Now, let me next deal with anaphora. Now, what is anaphora? It is a word which refers to an earlier conversation in the text. Now, here we find the poet talking about the roads and the decision he has made. Now, and again we find this repeated in the next half of the poem also. So, here if I see the word and in the first stanza is repeated often in lines 2, 3 as well as 4. So, you have the same word with the same meaning being repeated in the text. The next poetic device is alliteration. Alliteration is where you have the consonant sound being repeated. Now, if I take the 8th line, because it was grassy and wanted where. Now, this consonant sound were, wanted where. I have an alliteration here. Then in 9th line I have though as far that the passing there, I have the sound the being repeated, though that. In these two words I have alliteration. Then in line 11, and both that morning equally lay in leaves. Here I have the repetition in la sound, equally, lay, leaves. So, I have an alliteration in this line also. And then if I move down to the 13th line, oh, I kept the first for another day. Here I have the consonant sound f repeated, first for. So, these are the instances of alliteration we can see in this poem. Next, let me take some instances for repetition. Sometimes poets repeat words to get the emphasis they want to convey. Now, the first line, I have two roads diverged in a yellow wood. This same line is repeated in the fourth stanza again as two roads diverged in a yellow wood. So, the whole sentence is repeated again in the fourth stanza. Now, the next instance is where I have from lines 16 to 20 where the lines are repeated, but with a slight variation. And again my word ages, ages and ages hence. The word ages is repeated twice in the last stanza. Okay, and then I have enjambment in this poem also. Now, what is enjambment? Enjambment is where a line runs without a stop in meaning or even without a punctuation. Now, if I take the first stanza, the last two lines I have, the first line, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveller, he continues the thought, and again in the third line, and look down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Here the one line runs into the other without a punctuation. Now, after having seen the various poetic devices, let us discuss the themes we can see in this poem. Now, after having seen a detailed explanation of the poem, can you identify the major theme of the poem? No, I can say that he is a nature poet. So, since he is a nature poet, naturally nature is a theme in this poem. You have various images being used here which shows that this poem is very close to the natural world. So, here I have nature, but he is using this nature of course to show the rumination which humans have, which will culminate in a final decision. And naturally nature here shows us that at the end of our life, likewise the forest which he crosses will give us deeper knowledge and growth of our own condition. So, nature we can say is the primary theme of this poem. Next theme I can identify is isolation. Now, here you find a man walking alone in a forest. He also has shown us that he rather had difficulty in taking a decision because there was no one there to suggest options for him. So, here isolation is where human beings in life too sometimes will stand isolated. So, this isolation is where of course a man finds difficulty in making a choice, but we also find that solitude often leads to discovery of truth. So, the two themes I have said is, one is nature, the second is isolation. Now, I can also say that there are more themes in this poem. Let me say that the next theme is fate. Now, what is here the fate? Now, the man is continuing to walk on the path even though finding that this path is not better than the other. This path too had been chosen by others. Likewise, life also is where fate plays. No one can predict the future, but it will also lead us rightly to our destination. So, fate is also a theme in this poem. Now, the next theme is here choice and uncertainty. You find the man standing there alone and looking for long down the roads. So, here the choice is right before him, but he is uncertain. He does not know whether to take the path one over the other. He cannot decide which is better. Likewise, in life also there will be very many anxious moments for us. We will have to understand that only through experience can we understand the rightness of a path. So, uncertainty again here, it will be there throughout our life. Again and again we will face certain situations where we are uncertain. But here, as the man had accepted the choice he had made, we too in life should take the options we have chosen. So, The theme here is choice and uncertainty. Now let me move to symbols. This poem is very symbolic. So here I can take objects and I can of course relate it to the symbols they signify. The first one is trees. Now here trees show actually the boundaries of a forest, and also the trees here obscure the path in life. Similarly, where I am walking, I might not always be able to see the end result of the choices I make. So trees here are a symbol to the paths obscure difficulties or hardships we face in life. The next symbol is borders. Now here he says the undergrowth is thick and it covers and even obscures his path. Similarly in life also you will have varying experiences which can prevent our achievements, but we have to accept that both failure and achievement is part of life. Then the next symbol of course is the solitary traveler. Most of the poets, especially during the Romantic era, they use this concept of solitary travelers. Now these wanderers, they go about their journey, but naturally through their confusion and anxiety they come to realize certain truth. So here the symbol of the man standing there alone shows the confusions in life also we have. Now let me take imagery in this poem. There are various images. Now what is imagery? Images is where I have an object which I can through the poet's description see it in my own mind's eye. So here he is using certain images which will evoke the experience in our own minds. Now let me first tell you about the visual image. In the third stanza the lines run, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. So here he is narrating how he walked on the road. Now when you read the lines you can imagine the morning time. You can also see that the path is very clean and not strewn with dead and crushed leaves. So here this is an image which evokes in our own mind even the scene of the morning. And also we can look at the young man standing there. He is wondering which path to choose. So in this visual image we can see that the morning time, the path which is fresh, and also the solitary man standing before it. Now the next instance I can say, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Now again in this line you can see that the path is not very acceptable to the poet, because earlier he thought it was very grassy and here now it is walked on much by people. So here again this is an image where we can see the path filled with leaves which wanted where, he says. So the leaves were not crushed by walking. So again here, can you understand the meaning here? Here he says the leaves or the grass looked as though it wanted wear. The grass was asking people to walk on it because it wanted wear, it wanted to be crushed. Now this is a beautiful image the poet is using in this poem. Okay, and then I can tell another poetic device which is personification. Now in line 8 he says, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Now he is personifying this grass as though it is a living being. It is asking people to walk on it and to crush it so that it can become worn out. Now this is where he is personifying the grass to be having life. It is asking people to walk on that path so that it can also be worn out like the other path. Now after seeing a detailed explanation of the poem and analyzing the poetic devices, have you actually come to the conclusion that life is a path where we have choices to make and how these choices define our future? So here we find the speaker telling us about a fork in the road he was traveling while going inside a wood. It also refers, as I mentioned, the life path which we are walking every day. Dilemmas are there in every person's life, but overcoming these dilemmas we should make the right choice and also ensure that these choices define our future. I did also insist and say that Frost here is not saying that people should make difficult choices. We should rather be sensible when we make the choice in our life. This poem also teaches us that we have to make the decision and continue with our decision. We should not regret the choice we have made, but only make sure that the choices work for us. Thus, this poem is very philosophical. It helps us to take chances in life, overcome the dilemmas, ponder and then make a wise decision. And as I said, it is also not insisting about uniqueness. Do not make choices by saying that someone has never tried these. It would be usually better to make choices already made because we would know the advantages and disadvantages in them. Use your individuality, think properly before you make a wise decision, and also make sure that this decision is never hasty. Be confident, avoid confusion while making the decision, and also after you make a choice, avoid confusion over the results. Make your choices work for you. Avoid regret, as life-altering decisions will never be clear to us what results it will give in the future. So thus in this poem we see Frost beautifully showing people how life is, what choices define our life, and how we should never regret all the choices we have made. Thank you.